I would yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Washington State, Dr. McDermott.
The gentleman from Washington is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come down here to oppose this bill. I'm not on the committee, but I was sitting in my office and it made me angry to hear people down here talking about H.R. 897. You put out a title that says Zika Control Act. That sounds like a good thing. People ought to be happy we're going to control this vector that's out there. But it's a lie. This does nothing about Zika. It doesn't do anything with the research that the president has asked the money for. What it does simply is turn the applicators and the pesticide manufacturers loose on this country again. Now, I've been here long enough to remember all the problems with the bird eggs that had soft shells and the birds were dying and we couldn't have all these animals were dying all over the place because of DDT and all the things that happen with that kind of application freely in the society. One of the things you have to think about, and what I would caution my congressional friends in the Republican caucus is, you ought to learn from history. Philadelphia was once full of malaria. Philadelphia was a malaria city. You kept the windows closed at night because you didn't want to get malaria. Now, what we're seeing today because of global warming is a moving north from the equator of the organisms that create disease. I hear somebody from Louisiana say, oh my God, we got malaria, we got all kinds of problems in Louisiana. You are going to have them. You can find evidence everywhere that these organisms are there, but the answer is not to let there be unrestricted and uncontrolled application of pesticides. That doesn't solve the problem, because what it does is creates another set of illnesses related to the effects of pesticide on human beings and on animals and on reproduction. And so what you're doing is saying, well, let's spread this stuff out on the ground and all over the water, and people are going to get in contact with that water. There's no question about it, directly or indirectly, and you are going to have the other diseases that come from this. And I won't spend to give a whole long lecture on the effects of pesticides on people, but I will remind you about something called Agent Orange. Guys like me who were around the Vietnam War saw that stuff sprayed all over the trees. People said, oh, that doesn't do anything, it just the leaves drop off. And then we've had an epidemic of physical illnesses secondary to Agent Orange. We've told veterans for years, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It wasn't that Agent Orange that got you. Well, then we decided...
Expired.
The gentleman, one additional minute.
The gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Then we found out that, in fact, it was, and we have been paying and paying and paying. So this is one of those issues where you put it on cheap, but you're going to pay for it in the long term. Now, some of you over there clearly don't care. The guy in Michigan that made the decision that they'd use that dirty river water and inflict that on the children of Flint and the lead poisoning and the lead effects on their heads, that's the kind of mentality we're dealing with people who run this bill every 2 years from the companies that make this stuff. It comes 2011, 2013, 2014, 2015. Here it is again this year. It'll be back. This bill isn't done. They're going to keep trying to convince the American people that you can just spread chemicals everywhere and it doesn't have effects on people, but it does. That's what environmental health is all about. And that's why this bill is a step backward to about 1950, when we didn't really know what pesticides did to people. Now we do. And we are absolutely right in voting against this bill, and the president ought to veto if it gets through. The Senate as bad as they are, they won't even let this bill through.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.